Hello viewers, this is the final round of this season's Manufacturers Cup. Round number 7 brings us to Interlagos. Now I've missed most of the rounds of this season because I've been away on holiday. I did do the previous round though, and here's what happened. I qualified in a sensational 5th place. At the start of the race on the soft tyre, I was in the ascendancy, going past this guy who was on the hard tyre. I lost touch with the leaders in a fairly lonely 4th, before being overtaken for that 4th near the end, which meant ultimately after a 35-minute race I finished in 5th place. It's going to be a P5. I think that's the best I could have done in that car, so it wasn't really worth making an entire video for that. But we moved to the final round. I have not done any practice, so this first race is going to be an experiment. 264 for a win, so I'm definitely not in as high a lobby as I probably could be. But we jump in to the first qualifying session, and as I said, I was very much experimenting here. Well, firstly with a very bad line coming out of the final corner, which mostly, well, it really just compromised my next lap, and I kind of was getting in the way of this guy, so I felt like I didn't want to compromise his lap because of my mistake, so I moved over, let him go through, and if anything, it let me kind of follow someone. I didn't know if this guy was quick, but he pulled away slightly on that first lap, and you see there we were actually first and second once everyone set their first lap, so actually this guy was alright. He made a mistake here though on the second lap, so I went through, and this lap was slightly quicker. I was learning all the time. You see there 1/10 up on the pole position time through the second split. Final corner was decent. He actually made the mistake I made by going very wide on the exit of the final corner, and I went up to pole position by 0.3 of a second. Absolutely sensational scenes. The crowd went absolutely ballistic when they saw that. But then coming through the center S, actually it was the turn of the Frenchman to go onto pole position, as you can see there, by 0.069. Very nice time indeed. And so it was my job now to try to go quicker than that. 0.005 quicker than the purple lap there, or than the pole lap in the first sector. At the end of the second sector, I was 0.006 up. So I just had to get a good final corner and a good run down the final straight, and I would potentially be on pole. However, that unfortunately was not the case. That's actually really annoying. Second place by 0.016. Right, we really want to protect the tyres here. We're going to go rear bias. Try and do a one-stop, soft to hard. I don't know. We're going to have to work this one out as we go. Now, I went into this race with some knowledge, thanks to Mr_MCA. Definitely someone you should follow on YouTube and on Twitter, as he does all the strategies for these races, and it's always a good guideline or a baseline from which you can work if you don't know the strategy for the upcoming races. So I went off of his strategy with a one stop, going from the soft tyre to the hard, and we'll just see how it goes. I don't really know. This is my first time doing the race, so quite quickly here we got a gap from myself to 3rd place. So I was pulling away here with the Porsche, and it didn't take long to get the upper hand on this guy, as he was quite slow through the center S on lap number 2. Didn't really put up a fight here as we move up into the lead of the race. Now it is a long race, this 30 laps around Interlagos. We're looking at like 45 minutes, and therefore we don't really want to push too hard and kill our tyres. We do need to be quite careful. This is the end of lap number 4, setting the fastest lap of the race so far, 31.2. And this is where the race became a little bit easier for me, as we come through the center S. And you can see here, the Frenchman, as an absolute mare, turns right as he's meant to be turning left. And boom, he's down the order. I've got a nice little 3-second gap now back to the German there in second. At the end of lap number 10, the gap was up to 9 seconds, so it was quite a comfortable race. You can see the German going into the pit lane at the end of lap number 10. I wanted to do a couple more laps on this tyre. As you can see, the right-hand tyres especially beginning to die of death. The front right around this track takes the brunt of the force, especially on corners like this, big braking zone, leaning on that front right tyre. So it takes the worst of all of the forces. And by the end of lap number 12, it had fully deceased that front right tyre. So it was time to come in and change over. I mean, there was a free choice in this race of hard, medium and soft. I didn't actually have the mediums bought on this car, but I wanted the hard tyres anyway, as these would bring me all the way through to the end on just the one-stop strategy. So I came out in third, as you can see here, and the guy in second here made a bit of a mistake coming out of turn number 4 and didn't really put up any resistance. And this was quite smart driving, to be honest, because we were all on our own little strategy. There was no real need to properly fight on the track. You kind of just run your own strategy and hope that it's enough. And to defend and fight, I mean, at least before the end of the race, would kind of just kill your race. So I managed to get past the Ukrainian driver here for the lead with the fresh hard tyres. I'm not sure what tyres he's on, but they're fairly old at this point. And a little bit later on, the gap went up to 20 seconds. This is lap number 30, as you can see there, big gap. So it was quite a comfortable race in the end. And the strategy seemed good. The boys back at base coming up with an amazing strategy as ever. And it's going to be a rare, and it's going to be a fairly satisfying victory. Get in there, Lewis. P1, mate. Okay, 264 points for that. I think the strategy was good, going from soft to hard, but we're going to have to go again. I want to get more points than that, I think. And to improve my driver rating, I joined a quick daily race, finishing 5th. Hopefully that did the trick. But what will definitely do the trick is whipping on a nice new livery. And we're going for the cursed Bentley livery. Okay, time slot number 2. Hopefully this one is worth more points. Yes, there we go. 342 for first. 6th place, and I get more points than I got in the last race. So 6th is the aim. If not, hopefully better. Let's see how we do in qualifying. Now this is going to be harder. We're in a higher split lobby here. And therefore, you know, in the first race we were second by a very small margin, but I was expecting this lobby to be much more competitive, and therefore I'd have to ideally go quicker than I did in the previous race. So at the end of my first lap in qualifying, setting a decent lap time, but it was very close at the front. That was a 30.7, and I was only a quarter of a second off of pole position. So that kind of proved to me straight away that it was going to be very close. Quarter of a second away from pole, but I'm 4th at this point. So let's see what we can do about trying to improve that. Now through the first split on my second lap, I am about a 1/10 of a second down. I really did mess up the entry to the Center S on this lap. And therefore I'd have to do some good work through this, the middle sector. And I actually felt quite comfortable, even though this Genesis is actually quite clunky and it feels a little bit heavy and slow through these slow corners. Through the faster corners it's not as bad, but it is quite an understeery car. So through that middle sector, the twisty sector is quite difficult. Now I gained about 3/10 through that middle sector compared to my first lap. So by now it's a quarter of a second up. So this should, if that last corner was correct, put me towards the front of the pack. And let's have a look. It certainly did improve my lap time. Less than a 1/10 away, although that guy did improve his lap time. So once again, still very close. I am 1.5 away from first. But again, moving down the order, you see there, 1.5 away from pole, but I'm 4th. And so this was very, very competitive indeed, as we kind of feared earlier. Now I'm a 1/10 up in the first sector, and so I could gain a handful of positions. By this point, I'm in 6th place. Because I'm the first car on the track, the other competitors are setting their times after me, and therefore I could still always get demoted a couple of positions after setting my lap time, and that is happening at the moment. And so all we can do is just try to improve this lap time as much as we can and hope that it's enough. This middle sector feeling okay. It's really hard to really know the difference until you actually get confirmation at the end of the sector. And we'll get that around this corner. Let's head through to the left. Trying to get on the power as early as possible. Just holding off a little bit there. We've actually lost the advantage we got through Sector 1. And now I'm dead even. So this final corner is going to decide if I'm going to gain any time at all. I wasn't very happy about losing that time. But let's see what position we're going to be in as we cross the line here at the end of qualifying. Wow, that was so close. 2/10 away from pole. And I'm 7th on the grid. And for this one, I'm going to do the reverse strategy. I'm going to start on the hard tyre, then go to the soft. I think we can get more laps in the soft if we do it this way round. So courtesy of starting a bit further back, 7th this time rather than 2nd, I felt like let's go on the hard tyre, and then with the lighter car with less fuel, we might be able to get some more laps on the soft. But let's take a look here. The Nissan GTR in front not getting the best launch off the line, but we wasn't really able to capitalise. And the first thing I noticed here, on cold tyres, on hard tyres as well, this car was very oversteer happy. It wanted to slide quite a lot, so I had to be really quite diligent about managing that, not overdriving the car, not killing the tyres by steering too much and oversteering too much. Now initially here the Nissan GTR is going to get a penalty, so this should give me a position here on this first lap, presuming I stay within a decent enough range of this guy. And of course the first thing we're trying to notice here really is who is on what tyre. I was guessing by this point that most people would join me by going onto the hard tyre to begin with and then onto the soft later on. But it's never absolutely certain. There could definitely be people here on the soft tyre, even the medium tyre, I'm not really sure. There was quite an open strategy on this race. So here, through the penultimate corner, going to try and keep as close as we can. I've actually lost a bit of time to the GTR in front, but he is going to lose half a second or more than that really as he serves the penalty. So I'm going to move up into 6th position, my natural habitat. Beautiful stuff. So I mean I'll take that. That's a fairly solid lap number 1, I would say. Across the line, 3 seconds away from the lead. We'll see after a couple of laps who is on the soft tyres. They begin to fight their way through from the back or pull away at the front, and then things will become a little bit more clear. So settling into this race here in lap number 2 in 6th place. And you see this Supra coming up quite quickly behind, so I was presuming that this guy might be on the soft tyre. But just take a look up in front as the GTR there, the Italian, having a bit of an incident by turning left there into the wall, and it looked like he kind of just lost control on the curb on the exit, which is very easy to do. You've got to be very careful on the exit curb of that corner. And then here, this works into my favour as there's a bit of an incident with the 3 cars behind making contact with each other, and that is the Supra getting punted into oblivion, and he finds himself in a new dimension somewhere else. So that opened up the space behind me by 1.5 seconds. Therefore, I could really just focus on trying to follow these 2 McLarens. Now, take a look at the white McLaren in front, and you see how it went around that corner. Now, compare it to this, guys, and tell me the difference, because the first time looked quite nice. This one, maybe not so much. It looked like a severe case of turning right into a left-hander, but it's quite hard for me to confirm. I would like you to tell me in the comments exactly what happened to that guy there. But what I am very sure of is that I've now moved up into 4th place. Started 7th, now 4th. This is going rather well. And it was now a case of trying to just get up to the back of this McLaren up in front. TRL Spurgy 777. It looked like the top 2 were on soft tyres. They were 11 seconds clear. So they're definitely running a different strategy. And you can see over the course of a couple of laps here, I was just beginning to edge slightly closer to the McLaren. There was a couple of corners where I was a little bit quicker, especially that turn 4 that we just went through. The Italian, who had the rendezvous with the wall, quite close behind me, 0.4 behind. And this was about as close as I really got, about half a second behind. And you can see there Spurgy having another mini incident on that curb. This time not going into the wall, but definitely losing a handful of time and actually being demoted there into 6th place. So not quite having the consistency he would like on that corner, on the exit of it at least. And we're getting rather close to potentially getting into a podium position here by looking at the back of the McLaren. However, that was about as close as I really managed to get to it, because I think as I got closer, I just couldn't really get within half a second or any much closer than that. You see they're having a bit of a moment through the center S. It felt like my tyres were beginning to go off. And you see here, lap 11, the McLaren just easily pulling away. We are in the lead by this point because the top two had pitted from the lead with the soft tyres. And I was just beginning to drop away slightly here at the end of this first stint on the hard tyre. As you can see, the GTR of Jenson Taylor going through up into second. And it seems as though the McLaren in front in the lead and this GTR just had just a bit more life in their tyres at this latter phase of this opening stint. And here, this is quite an interesting point of the race, because this is where some strategies converge. So Mario Sonic was up in first or second, went for the pit from those positions, and now finds himself behind me. The leader, Spurgey in the McLaren, going into the pit lane at the end of lap 16. I ideally wanted to do one more lap, and you can see here Mario Sonic in the GTR is going to go through. I'm not really going to fight it. He's on much fresher tyres, and you can see the difference that fresh tyres makes. I don't really know what compounds he's on, but you see even just on the exit of Center S, just gets so much more grip and drive off the corner. There's just no point in fighting it really. And through here as well, it's just going to pull away effortlessly, and therefore to really defend against that is kind of futile. You are going to get overtaken, so there's no point in losing time in doing so. And over the course of this lap just begins to pull away quite effortlessly, before I eventually pulled into the pit lane myself. At the end of lap number 17, I felt like that was enough laps to come in and change over to the soft tyre. Come on, the Genesis boys, or the Bentley boys. The Bentley team here with a fantastic pit stop. We've got to manage the tyres a bit, but let's see how this goes. So this time we are doing a 13 lap stint. In the first race I did 12 laps on the soft and then 18 on the hard. This time it's going to be 17 on the hard, before now hoping that I can last 13 laps. This is going to be a bit of an ask. The car is lighter than in the first race because I've just burnt a load of fuel for the first half of this race. So that is the thing I'm relying on really, that my car is lighter, and usually that lends itself to being able to go a bit longer on a certain compound, especially the soft compound. So I find myself now in 8th place, and it's quite a confusing moment in the race when lots of strategies are overlapping. You're not really sure exactly what actual position you're in. However, a couple of cars going into the pit lane here at the end of lap 18, changing off of the hard tyre. I go from 8th back to 6th, so that was a positive sign. And I found myself actually behind the Italian, the guy who had a couple of run-ins with the wall and the curbs. So he's had a good recovery there with the undercut and has managed to get back in front of me. Jenson Taylor in front of him in the GTR. And at the end of lap number 19, we go on to lap 20, nearly 2/3 into this race. We're actually going to see another position gained here at the end of this lap, because Mario Sonic, who is there 29 seconds in the lead, is going to pit. But then this is the real battle for the lead here: 4th, 5th, 2nd and 3rd. I don't know why I said it in that order: 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th. And this is really the battle for the race win, because a pit stop costs you about 29 seconds, I think, around here. And therefore Mario Sonic is going to come out behind us when eventually he pits for that second time. So here, my main strategy really is to just try to ease up to the back of these guys. I really do have to manage the tyres. So it's really tempting to take all the life out of these tyres and push and go crazy and do as much as possible early on. But I do have to stretch this out. As we mentioned earlier, this is a long race. It's over 45 minutes. We are currently 31 minutes into the race. So we have a good amount of time remaining. So that was a nice comfortable lap. 1.2 behind the ERT driver in front, the Italian. And I think Mario Sonic, is he going to go into the pit lane this time around? I'm not sure. But anyway, across the line we go, and it's going to be a 30.6. So we're now lapping in the 30s, fairly consistent pace. The fastest lap in the race is a 30.5. So I know that I must be on the pace. You know, I'm only 1 tenth away from the fastest lap. And now we have Mario Sonic going into the pit lane. And we can get confirmation of that there. So on the soft tyre, so I imagine now having to go onto the hard tyre as he does. And you see him there, just coming out the pit lane on the left-hand side. We are therefore going to move up into 4th place. So this is the situation at this moment in time as he just comes out of the pit lane behind us, maybe by about 3 or 4 seconds on the hard tyre. So we should be clear of Mario Sonic. So this is the situation now. I'm in 4th place. I'm 4 seconds off the lead. And this is actually very close indeed. So you see there, a battle of 4. We are actually quite clear of the rest of the pack there. Mario Sonic 4.5 seconds behind, and then he's probably got another 4 seconds back to the next car behind him. And so I can really just focus on the cars in front now. I know that it's us to the end, and hopefully it's not a bitter end. So my lap times there, fairly consistent here at the start of the soft tyre stint. Bunch of laps in the 30s, and lap 23 here in a low 31. I was just edging slightly closer by like a tenth a lap. The gap now 0.8 to the Italian in front. We're going to whip it forward here to lap number 28. And the situation was slightly different. I mean, I was still gaining on this guy, but the guy in second was really close to the leader by this point. So that's Jenson Taylor catching up with Spurgey for the lead of the race. And so as we cross the line to begin lap number 29, 2 laps are remaining. So this is just boiling up to a crescendo now, and my tyres are boiling to death. I mean, as we mentioned earlier, we knew that this was going to be really tricky at the end of the stint to make sure these tyres survive right the way to the end. You see it there. Look at the front right. It has about 4% of life remaining, and so we are really on life support at this point. And we are 3 seconds away from the lead. This is so close after 44 minutes of racing. 3 seconds separates myself from the lead of the race. So only 3 seconds separating 4 cars. This is really good racing between the 4 of us. A McLaren, 2 GTRs and the Genesis here. But can we go about improving this position? Even just getting on the podium would be a fantastic result and would net us more than 300 points, which is normally a good score for me. But I had 2 battles here really to fight. One catching up with this guy in front, and then the second one, the tyres. And you see there an incident, a puff of smoke coming up from the top 2. So they're making contact, and I was just kind of living in hope here that my tyre's now dead. As you can see there, the front right completely dead. I was hoping that maybe that top 2/top 3 could start fighting. You see here, Jenson Taylor in the GTR on the left going defensive, and that's certainly going to slow them down. And I'm watching that with anticipation, as I'm also watching my tyres with anticipation, because once your tyres go down completely to 0, there's a very good chance you have a fatal failure and you have a complete puncture and you die of death quite horrifically. But here I was thrown a lifeline. Look at that. The guy in third, the Italian, with a 1 second penalty, and that could potentially give me third when he serves it in just a moment. I just had to drive the last portion of this lap somewhat okay, which is not easy to do when you have a completely dead tyre and the rest of your tyres are mostly dead as well. Coming up into the final corner of the race, is it going to be enough? This is certainly going to be very close indeed. Let's take a look as he serves the penalty here at the beginning of the straight. We are certainly going to get very close indeed. It's going to be a drag race to the line with the Italian, Genesis versus GTR. And thankfully, we've done just enough to secure a podium right at the end of the race. And that is a result I was very happy with. What a race. That was so good. I'll take a third. The tyres were dying on that car. I did that 12 or 11 seconds quicker than I did the first race. So I think that was the better strategy, and I just drove pretty well, I think. There we go, 313 points. That's a really nice way to round off this season, I think. We said this back at the start of the Nations Cup Championship that the endurance races were really good, and this one proved to be the case. These longer races are very enjoyable. Okay, time to claim our prizes for the end of the championship. So this is the new set of rewards they give you at the end of the FIA seasons now. Let's take a look. $7.2 million credits. First in my local area, 5th for Genesis, and then 348th in EMEA. Now this is something that's really quite annoying. Now that the championship is finished, I can't go on it to see the points, so I have to go on the website. And here we are on the website. I only did the last 2 rounds. I got 5th overall for Genesis. Interestingly enough, the top manufacturer was McLaren after all that. Not even Nissan. I would have thought Nissan would be right up there, but